Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher, and we got a pinch hitter in, Andrew DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com. Going to fill in for Adam Kaplan on this episode. Me and Adam will be back on the Monday morning podcast to do our Eagles-Giants preview. But I got to be honest with you, Andrew, with all the stuff going on with the Eagles right now, I feel like this game, the whole Giants, like previewing the matchups and everything, is secondary to just the Eagles getting their act together, getting their house clean, getting their life in order, and starting to get some good vibes back around the franchise again. Don't you get the feeling that with this game coming up, style points are actually going to matter? Like if they come out of this game winning 10-3, people are not going to be thinking that the Eagles are the force that they look like for the first 2.5-3 months of the season.
Right. On paper, Jeff, this looks like a pretty cupcake schedule the next 3 weeks. So you would think that the Eagles should be able to dominate and carry that momentum into the postseason. But if they let Tommy Cutlets go in there and carve up that secondary, and they struggle to get off the field on third down and all those things that have troubled them over the past few weeks, I mean, that's a pretty big problem.
Yeah. And well, I've heard the expression lately, if you can lose to Drew Lock, you can lose to anybody. But, Tommy Cutlets is not even as experienced as Drew Lock, although, he had a little hot streak there. We'll get into that. And look, I want to discuss some of the things that our listeners, our viewers get to know from reading your work on InsideTheBirds.com. Everybody loves your rookie diary with Eli Ricks, and that's now become more than just an interesting story about a rookie, as Eli Ricks has factored into the defense. You've gotten to know a lot of the guys in the secondary, just covering the team, being there in the locker room, either during the week or on game day. And then, of course, guys on special teams. So we're going to talk about some of the issues going on with the Eagles over the last 24, 36 hours here and how that might parlay into their matchup against the Giants on Christmas. And, man, I don't like personally when the Eagles play on Christmas because it's like a holiday. And, I think for reporters, it's, we're already trying to take care of families and do, get everything done there. But then it just adds, like, you have to work on Christmas. But then if you lose on Christmas, it just kind of like, makes Christmas bad if you lose, and someone's got to lose. So I am either going to feel bad for New Yorkers or bad for Philadelphians. Either way, it's that whole thing where it only helps to play on Christmas if you win.
Yeah, I mean, and they, like you said, they have to win convincingly because this is a matchup on paper that they should be able to dominate.
Right.
And if not, then you have a whole other set of problems. I mean, look, over the past few weeks, Jeff, it's hard to pinpoint just one area that the Eagles have really struggled in. It's been a collective downfall. It's sort of been a nosedive. So do you want to see them come out and really take it to the Giants like they're supposed to, and then carry that over into the Cardinals on, I guess it's New Year's Eve?
Yeah, back to back there with the holiday season. All right, we've had a lot of great content this week here on Inside the Birds, Andrew. Q&A. Listen, I'm not going to spend 20 minutes because I know people get on us about how much we promote our shows, but Q&A this week was so good. Like the list of comments right now of people who saying they're learning something. I mean, they really went into some deep concepts, like route concepts that they're seeing from the Eagles offense, and then from defense coverages, schemes. And they used visuals. They did an excellent job. I would encourage everybody to check it out because they had some really pointed viewpoints on what are some of the things that are failing the Eagles lately. Greg Cosell, Clay Harbor broke down the All-22 as they usually do. That came out, and it was fantastic Thursday morning, much like Q&A, very analytical, very explanatory. And we'll get into some of that in this podcast, Andrew, because I believe that there's this sort of, I don't want to call it a civil war going on among the fans and the followers about, is it coaching? Is it personnel? Is it personnel? Is it coaching? I mean, the answer is always yes and yes, and we'll get into a little bit more based on what Clay and Greg and Q&A have said. If it's not out yet, it'll be out soon. Derek Gunn did his gun-on-one with Quentin Michael this week, and it wasn't just to rehash everything from Q&A. In fact, Andrew, you'll know this. This year is the 15th season since Jim Johnson was last the defensive coordinator, last coached in the NFL with the Eagles as their defensive coordinator, and he's probably the last beloved defensive coordinator in this city, like truly beloved defensive coordinator in this city. And Quentin Michael obviously grew up through the Eagles and played for Jim. So he and Derek Gunn had a really good discussion about what Jim meant to the franchise, how tough it was to see Jim coaching in 2008 as nobody knew it at the time, but starting to battle cancer, and then he would wind up passing away the next summer in 2009 before training camp. So really good stuff. Walk back in time and some great memories of. I think the older generation Eagle fan will really appreciate this gun on one, and the newer generation will probably get a sense of what defensive coordinators were like back in the early day, a little more crusty and cantankerous, the way people liked them. You
Well,
remember?
you covered a lot of those years.
I did. I covered Jim Johnson. I thought he was so honest, so refreshing. And I also think that unlike some coaches who come off in front of the cameras as, like they're putting on that crusty, cantankerous vibe and they're not easily relatable in the locker room, I always sense that players love playing for Jim and that he was actually a player's coach who just happened to be crusty and cantankerous. So, but God bless him and may he rest in peace. He really was one of a kind, a very honest guy. His pairing with Andy Reid, I think, was perfect for each other. And I feel bad that he never got to experience the Super Bowl, because he was certainly a Super Bowl caliber defensive coordinator, a really, really good defensive coordinator.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's that. We'll have our normal Inside the Birds pregame live on Monday, which is Christmas Day, 1:00. We're having a 1:00 start, pushing it back so that people can enjoy Christmas morning with their families at least and get that in before we get into game coverage. And of course, on Patreon this week, we'll have our segment with John DiFilippo, Flip Script, where I can't wait to hear what he's got on the Eagles offense here coming off, their game against Seattle. And we'll be doing a live stream on Tuesday, the day after Christmas. Adam and I will with our Patreon members, an Ask ITB live stream. So of course you can go to patreon.com/InsideTheBirds to subscribe. All right, Andrew, before we get into this game, Adam and I always talk about, this, the old pop-up injury, right? That comes up on the injury report. You didn't see happen in a game. That already happened early as Landon Dickerson. It turns out he had thumb surgery. I don't know if anybody knew that coming out of the game, that he had injured his thumb, but he did. He had thumb surgery. So obviously he's not going to be able to practice and not going to be able to play for the Eagles. So they will once again be on a backup guard. And we'll have to, it's interestingly, and it was Sua Opeta at right guard, not Tyler Steen against the Seahawks. I'll ask you, my viewpoint was that and I don't know if I'm just trying to rationalize something that doesn't make sense, because I find myself doing a lot that lately with the Eagles, but maybe because Seattle is such a difficult place to play, you're on the road, it's very loud, you have to rely on the silent count, that they went with a more experienced player in Sua Opeta over a rookie, Tyler Steen, who had started the last time Juergens was hurt. Tyler Steen started that game. Maybe they just didn't see it the same way as far as environment. I don't know. What were you thinking on that?
Yeah, so I was at practice on last Friday, and then you see Sua Opeta with the first team taking snaps opposite Kelsey and Lane.
Right.
And, I took a video of it, put it on Twitter or X, and because I thought that was interesting, because I thought for sure Tyler Steen being the rookie, someone that you're going to develop, and Sua Opeta has been someone that he's been relegated as a weekly inactive for a number of weeks now. I thought it was kind of curious. So I think a lot of it had to do with Geoff, him being able to be in that environment and handle that sort of the crowd noise. And he started a bunch of games before at the NFL level. So I think that in a get right spot where they had to win, they had to have it. They didn't have it, but you wanted to put somebody out there that's logged a ton of snaps, and Sua Opeta is that player. And I thought he looked all right early on. There are certain issues that he had later on, and we know how that went. But I would think that Tyler Steen, by the way, did not have a really good game against the Dallas Cowboys, worse than any game that I can recall Sua Opeta having. So I think that may have factored in a gotta have a situation.
Yeah, that's a good point. May have factored in. And again, that Dallas game was at home, so as loud as it's going to get, it's not going to get very loud offensively, and you don't have to rely as much on a silent count, if at all. And so maybe that was a big part of it. Now with Cam Juergens, this is new on the injury report. He was able to, I believe, practice on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. He was a full participant in practice. He was, which is great news for the Eagles. So he can go back and play right guard, but we'll have to see whether now they moved Sua Opeta to left guard, that used to be where Sua Opeta could only play, if I'm
Right.
not mistaken. Maybe it was right
Yeah,
guard. Either way, he was
I
only
believe it was left guard, and then he
right.
worked in the right guard the past couple summers.
Yeah, so I would think that it might be Sua Opeta again, but again, this is a
I
home
think
game, so I don't know what their thinking is going to be there.
I think it'll be Sua Opeta at left guard if I had to guess right now on Friday morning. But
Yeah,
yeah, Steen, look, he had to learn right guard. He's a tackle by trade, so I certainly don't think that they would throw him in there at left guard. Jack Driscoll's a player that maybe could garner some consideration, but I think Sua Opeta would be the choice.
yeah, I think they're pretty much at this point married to Jack Driscoll at right tackle and maybe nowhere else unless it's an emergency. And I agree with you on Opeta, especially not just um, because he started the last game and the experience, but they're going up against a Wink Martindale defense we'll get into in a little bit, right? And if there's anything that Wink Martindale is known for, it is disguising blitzes to the point where he forces the offensive line to have to communicate and slide protection one way or another. You got to pick up where the blitzer's coming from. And then he's famous for not really blitzing from that side, blitzing from a different angle and breaking down a protection scheme to get a free rusher at the quarterback. And you can prepare for it. You can do anything you want all week long. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen because he's doing the same thing all week long with his group. And I think I would probably feel more comfortable with a guy who started a bunch of games than a rookie who's only started one game, when you know that communication and the ability to kind of recover and pivot are going to be really important against this kind of defense. So we'll see where they go with that. We'll probably get more information as the week goes. Everybody has to remember the Eagles' first practice of the week was yesterday. So because again, they're on Monday night. And by the way, Andrew, it was not a walkthrough. So for the second straight week, Nick Sirianni has said, you guys got enough rest because you had Wednesday off. Thursday, you're out in a real practice, not a walkthrough. Setting the tone here, Andrew. I mean, I interpret that as he doesn't have to give him a walkthrough coming off an extra day rest, but B, also setting a tone.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to steady the ship here, right? I mean, you're just coming off a 3-game skid, and you gotta set the temperature, as they say, and hit that reset button and make sure everybody's on the same page and let them know that this is what it takes if you want to be committed and be the team that you're supposed to be. So I think that's the right move. You certainly don't want to coast into this game. The Eagles can't afford to any slip ups here over the next few weeks.
Right. Well, they're going to have to overcome other things besides their own mishaps, because as we talked about the pop-up injury, right? This latest one is not good, and we'll have to see what goes on later in the week. But they're already down Zach Cunningham, who again was missing practice with the knee injury. And then what pops up is Zach Morrow, Nick Morrow, who I think had a pretty decent game against Seattle. He doesn't practice on Thursday because of an abdomen injury. Now, I don't want to scare anybody, but if he can't play, Andrew, if Cunningham and Morrow cannot play, you are looking at starting like a base linebacker tandem of Shaq Leonard and Ben Van Sumeren. Now, like I said, I don't want to scare anybody. We got a couple of days left to see what happens, but that, to me, I don't care who they're playing, whether it's the New York Giants or the Pop Warner Fairfield, New Jersey Giants. If those are your two linebackers, that is not a great situation. And that just compounds what they're trying to do, which is find themselves a defensive identity right now.
Yeah, and Morrow, it's interesting because he got a lot of flack, and rightfully so, for that San Francisco 49ers game that he was abysmal in. But I think by and large, Jeff, he's been really steady, and he's a really smart player, really active, and I thought he was their best defensive player throughout the entirety of that game on Monday night. So to not have him, you're going to probably have to use a little bit of Shaq Leonard, but I would imagine some Byard and Sidney Brown, a heavy dose of those guys, because and you even saw that they really were hesitant and seemed pretty reluctant to put in Shaq Leonard. I think he played 28 snaps the other night, and they used a lot of Sidney Brown. So I mean,
a lot of big nickel.
Like you said, there's still some time here, but that's really concerning. That's one of their lightest areas.
Yeah, and I want to address some confusion, not confusion, but I just want to address this now before we get into more, because there's so much to talk about. We may not even get into this. Sidney Brown played box safety in college. He's a good tackler when he doesn't overrun a play, right? He's got to learn how to harness that speed. But just, I think some people think, well, you're down a linebacker, you just play more big nickel and put a safety in there. It's still not a linebacker. He's still
Right.
not the biggest guy in the world, and he's still not as nearly as experienced as a guy like Nick Morrow. I get it, and I think Nick Morrow was a safety in college, but he's been a linebacker in the NFL. He knows where to be. He plays well. He's a good Eagles linebacker, maybe not a great linebacker when you look at the landscape of the league, but my point is that when people say, "Oh, you just all right, okay, Sidney Brown's a box safety, so that's kind of like a linebacker. He can make up the difference." No, it's not that easy. It's not the same
No.
thing at all.
Especially when you have Saquon Barkley running downhill.
Oh gosh, yeah, Saquon Barkley running downhill, exactly. Or if you got Darren Waller's healthy now, running across the middle and things like that.
True.
So we just got to see. You got to hope if you're an Eagles fan, you got to hope Nick Morrow or Zach Cunningham, if not both, can figure out a way to get out there. And then the last thing, as far as pop-up injuries, although he's had this injury before, but again, he plays in the games, but this time he's out of practice for full. He did not practice at all, and it's wide receiver Devontae Smith. Now, for an offense that's struggling, right, the last thing you want is now Devontae Smith being unable to suit up. They do have names and numbers there: Julio Jones, Quez Watkins, Olamide Zaccheaus, who all three of them have made plays at certain times, but man, like if you're already talking about this offense struggling to find a rhythm and identity and needing to get the ball more to Devontae Smith, who's been open, him not being able to play again just kind of hurts what you're trying to accomplish right now, even more so.
Yeah, not having Devontae in this game, needless to say, that would be detrimental to anything the Eagles want to do to establish any sort of rhythm on offense. The Eagles have struggled to find that third receiver as it is. I personally believe that Olamide Zaccheaus has needed a lot more snaps, but I mean, you're looking at potentially having to start a Quez Watkins, or he played 52% of the snaps, I believe, the other night. He would
Yeah.
be in line, I would imagine, if Devontae can't go.
Right. All right. Well, we'll just have to see. Again, this is the first day of practice, but it's not good to see both Devontae Smith, Morrow, and still Zach Cunningham out of practice. And of course, we know Darius Slay underwent the surgery, the clean out surgery on the knee. So very not likely to be playing in this week as well either. In fact, I'll just say he's not going to play this week, and we'll get into that. As far as full practice, we mentioned Cam Jurgens. Thank God for the Eagles, for him. I'm sure they're saying that he's back and hopefully he can make it through the rest of practice full like he did on Thursday. And then a great news that they activated Avonte Maddox into the 21-day practice window. This is a guy that we knew he was a good nickel corner, Andrew, but the impact of his loss this year as opposed to other years when they've lost him, I think has just been like 10 times worse. And, from Bradley Roby to Sidney Brown to the 7,000 other guys they've tried to play at nickel corner, right? Justin Evans. It's nice to have him back. It's nice to have him back. And I think conditioning at this point, when you miss this many weeks, right, is the biggest thing. If he's going to be a part of their playoff run, they got to get him into the game whenever he's ready. So if he makes it through a practice here and full practice, and again, on the injury report, he was listed as, at least for Thursday, he was listed as, was it a full participant, which I think is great. If he can continue to be a full participant, you got to be able to get him in there a little bit. You don't save him for the playoffs, right? You got to get him some conditioning and get him up to speed.
So, in your opinion, assuming he returns pretty soon, what becomes of Bradley Roby, right? So, I mean, Bradley, I would assume you talked about conditioning. He's coming off an injury. They might have to supplement the two players possibly, but I think if they're really comfortable with where Maddox is at, and they're not necessarily comfortable with James Bradberry is, maybe he kicks outside and plays some outside corner.
You know what?
Bradley Roby, that
is.
It
wouldn't surprise me. He has played outside corner in his career. I do think the Eagles need to really, and we'll see if they are, but they're going to have to soul search deeply here on James Bradberry. He's hurting them. He's hurting them so much that there's not even a give and take, right? He's not helping them. He's not causing turnovers. He's not getting a whole lot of great pass breakup. The last good pass breakup I think he had was the first game against Dallas when he broke up a third down or a fourth down pass to it was Tolbert, right? Jalen Tolbert. Now, he may have had one since then, but I can't remember it, and I don't know if it doesn't stick out to me. But he's hurting them way more than he's helping them. And then we'll talk when we get to defense about schematically what they can and can't do because of how much he's hurting them. But I guess it wouldn't surprise me if they felt that maybe they should give a look at Bradley Roby in certain packages as an outside corner because it can't get any worse. But I think at the same time, how much is Bradley Roby at his age as an outside corner going to help you when you now have a defensive play caller who likes to play a lot of man coverage? So that is all.
Yeah, no, it's tough, and I think ideally you would like to see the Eagles start to see a little bit more Keely Ringo, a little bit more Eli Ricks for these next 3 games that'll get them the experience in case you need them down the stretch, and maybe you let Bradberry sit on the bench and rest a little bit. You're going to need him for the playoffs. You're going to need Roby. You're going to need your veterans for that. But I think getting Ringo, who I thought looked pretty good the other night, Eli Ricks looked pretty good the other night. I think getting those guys game reps is crucial right now.
It is, and we'll talk about how Matt Patricia was able to get those guys on the field in different ways against Seattle and what that might mean for against the New York Giants. But before we get into that, Andrew, I don't know if you've noticed. I certainly noticed it. You know, Christmas is just a couple days away, and if you go outside now to run to the store for anything, you're going to be waiting in lines, or you're going to be in traffic, or you're just not going to be. You can't get a mile or two from your house now without it taking an hour, hour and a half, and getting home, because that's what happens at this time of the year. And nobody has time to plan and make their own meals at home, which is why we love HelloFresh. They deliver farm fresh food with pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to our doorstep. There is no wasting time at the grocery store. America's #1 meal kit helps make home cooking easy, efficient, and affordable. With HelloFresh, the shopping's already done, and the right amount of ingredients arrive with the step-by-step recipe cards. Plus, HelloFresh saves you time and money. It's 25% less expensive than takeout, so you get a home-cooked meal without digging deep into your wallet. And don't forget about taste and selection. Chicken, seafood, vegan meals, vegetarian meals, steak, whatever you want, HelloFresh they got it. You can order it easily. So go to HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use the code 50Eagles, 50Eagles, for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/50Eagles, and use that promo code 50Eagles, 50Eagles, all one word, for 50% off plus free shipping. Act now for America's #1 meal kit. And really quickly, before we sort of move on, I'll go through the Giants injuries. Guys who of name recognition of value here that did not participate in practice for them on Thursday were Dexter Lawrence, dealing with a hamstring injury. So that's something to watch. He's obviously their best, maybe their best overall defensive player. Another one of their best defensive players, safety Xavier McKinney, who was battling illness, so he didn't practice. They've been without Evan Neal, their right tackle, who has really struggled in his both first and second year. He's been out with an ankle. They have a situational defensive lineman, Raheem Nunez-Roches. He did not practice with a knee. So those are kind of the bigger names. A'Shawn Robinson, who's actually played well for them, a big interior lineman on defense, was limited with a back. And Justin Pugh and Darren Waller were both full participants, so that's good news for them. The really interesting news as we sit here today is I don't believe the Giants have a kicker, because they had Randy Bullock, who was kicking for them because Graham Gano was injured, but Randy Bullock injured his hamstring and went on IR after their last game against New Orleans. So I don't know, maybe they're just going to go for two and punt the ball. I'm sure they'll get themselves a kicker, but it does suck when you're trying to win games. You're trying to fight back, and now you got to be on your third string kicker. So we'll see what the Giants do in that department. All right, Eagles. Let's talk about the offense. I don't really want to spend too much time on like the whole Jalen Hurts made this statement about commitment. Everybody could read into it differently. I felt he was just saying that when you lose 3 games in a row, you can't just show up and say, we're going to work hard to correct these things and expect that to change. You have to kind of refocus. You have to focus in a little harder on what you're not doing well. It sounded like he took ownership of it to me in his press conference, saying that what he was saying, I wasn't saying anybody else wasn't committed. I'm just saying I have to be committed. It starts with me. And it does start with Jalen Hurts. As Q&A outlined, and as Greg Cosell and Clay Harbor showed too, there was a lot of, you can talk about the play calling, Andrew, but there were also plays that were there to be made that were not made. So I think play calling and quarterbacking go hand in hand. And I think when your quarterback's not seeing it right, which is clearly the case right now with Jalen Hurts, then it's up to your play caller to say, all right, even though these plays aren't working, I need to find the right rhythm. I need to find different plays that make the reads easily definable. I felt against Seattle, they actually did that. They had a nice 15 play drive and they
Yeah.
put points on the board. At some point, you have to stop saying Brian Johnson, Nick Sirianni, Kevin Patullo, and say, hey, look, maybe things could be better, but like the quarterback who just got this huge contract, who had this great MVP season last year, has to get back to seeing the clear picture.
Yeah, I've been really big on the personnel shortcomings. Some of the coaches have a hand in it, Jeff, but they're far from the sole culprit in this whole tailspin. A lot of it has to do with the personnel. And we looked at a lot of Jalen Hurts' shortcomings, a lot of the things that plagued him in 2021, the dropping his eyes, falling away from throws, not seeing the field well. You're seeing a lot of those things resurface now for
Yeah,
whatever reason. And what you're seeing is a lethargic offense that's squandering opportunities. Given the playmakers that they have, Jeff, it's really inexcusable.
it is. And more so than inexcusable, it is. And Greg Cosell and Clay Harbor said this too. It's hard to imagine, right? I mean, I know we've seen quarterbacks regress, and I know people want to go back to the Carson Wentz thing. I'm not there yet. I'm not even close. I also don't want to act like Jalen Hurts had 5 bad games in a row. I think that he actually threw the ball and made good decisions just 2 games ago against Dallas. They turned the ball over 3 times. That's what hurt them. They actually averaged 6.2 yards per play. Seattle, totally different story, though. He did not see it well. He did not look comfortable. I did think he left the pocket at times. And there were clearly defined reads for him that he didn't hit. That's problematic. I haven't seen like 2 or 3 games in a row of that. We've seen it at times this year. So I'm going to bank on the fact that he's going to put it together and the offense, he's going to work with the offensive coaches and they're going to figure out something. But at the end of the day, we're also talking about the Giants who aren't very good. So, but that doesn't matter. What matters is just getting him comfortable and back into a rhythm. But more than the whole inexcusable is how is just 1 year later, why is it happening? And I think that that's not something that anybody can answer. And maybe even Jalen Hurts, when he watches the film, Andrew, says, man, I used to hit that like all the time. I know that's where it's at. There are some people who think that he's just forcing it to AJ Brown because they're buddies. I don't think that's the case. I think if there is a case that he's forcing it, it's because AJ Brown makes a lot of plays, and any quarterback in time of doubt and nervousness, or not nervousness, but doubt or unsure, is probably going to try to throw the ball to his best playmaker. I think that would be more the case than this guy's my friend.
Yeah, he's pressing, Jeff, and knowing how competitive Jalen Hurts is, he's putting a lot of pressure on himself to be the guy and to deliver. And sometimes you try too hard, you're looking to hit those explosive plays, and you don't see what's right in front of you. And I think you're seeing right now a quarterback that's really pressing, and I think that's really the root of it.
Yeah, I think so too. And when you package that with a quarterback who's pressing, an offense that's been turning the ball over at an alarming rate. Granted, he's part of that, but so have other guys. There were some really bad drops just 2 games ago against that was Dallas, right? Where they were
Yeah,
dropping passes left and right.
yeah, Devontae and AJ.
Yeah, and I think that confidence is a real thing in football. And you watch this team, and if they like Jason Kelsey the other night sitting on the bench in Dallas, you could tell he was just about up to here with trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And when you lose your confidence, those things weigh on you. They may not consciously weigh on you, but you can tell because as soon as something goes wrong, you get that sinking feeling again. We saw that. So we've seen that with it many times over with other Eagles teams that either started off hot and hit a rut and couldn't recover, or individual players who start off well. And then all of a sudden things kind of regress or come back to the mean, and they can't figure out how to get that level back.
Yeah, no, I think there's something to be said for that, Jeff. And I think if there is any sort of a silver lining here, it's that they do have, and I wrote about this on InsideTheBirds.com, they have a veteran core that I just have a hard time believing that they're going to let this season go to waste. Jason Kelsey doesn't have many left. This could be very well his last season. Fletcher Cox the same way. They have strong leaders on both sides of the ball, and I think that this is where they're going to come into play and make sure this doesn't become a 4-game skid and then the season's lost. There's too much talent on this team for them to throw it away, and they have to refocus. And they don't have a lot of time. The postseason's right around the corner.
Who's the guy on offense, Andrew, that when you're down at the NovaCare or you're down at the link covering the games that you tend to like, just listen to their locker or listen to what they say, someone who gives good perspective that maybe people don't know about? Who's someone like that for you?
Jordan Mailata is terrific after the games. Kelsey goes without saying. Kelsey's always one of the last guys in the locker room. He always offers really thoughtful responses and really reflects on the game. And he's there for a while. And I would also say, not really Devontae or AJ, but mostly the offensive lineman. I really like Mailata in particular. Always struck me as somebody that really put some thought into it. And he's also pretty humorous sometimes as well.
Yeah, he is. He's a funny dude, and he can sing. I'm just wondering if any of your conversations, have anything led you to believe that the offense feels that they're missing a little bit of punch in the run game? Because I'm starting to think that maybe it is time, especially when you blow a fourth quarter lead like they did against Seattle, right? I mean, they led that game until the touchdown. So I think Seattle actually only led that game for one offensive play, right? That maybe it's time to brush the cobwebs off Rashad Penny and give him a shot. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to seem like I'm grasping at straws here. It's certainly not the biggest issue on the team, but you think in the fourth quarter, when you're trying to grind it out and trying to still get big plays instead of throwing the ball to maybe Quez Watkins, right? If you got a bruiser who can help you move the chains, I just wonder if it's either time for that or time to give Boston Scott more than the ceremonial 3 looks per game.
Spin the wheel. There's something to be said for that, Jeff. Every time I post the inactives every week, I get a comment, why is Rashad Penny here? Every week, but somebody will write that. And it's fair.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know how much Rashad Penny has left, but guess what? There's only one way to find out. Activate him and give him more than just a handful of carries and see what he could do. He's a bigger bodied running back. He has some size to him, more so than anybody else in the running back room. They are lacking a punch, and the closest guy that they have to a bruising between the tackles runner is Boston Scott. And let's face it, he's a far cry from that. So I think they need to kind of get a physical element in the running game. And that really starts with Rashad Penny. You would think that that's why he's here.
Right. And listen, the coaches, we believe the coaches know more than us. They see him every day. Not that they can't make mistakes, because we've seen that happen, but if they don't feel like he can give the element that we're describing right now, I think that people are right to say, then why is he on the 53? Why is he taking up a roster spot?
But yeah, I mean,
find someone who could help you there,
right? The same case for Alberto. There's certain players that are on this roster that you're weekly reminded. You're like, why is he here?
Right.
But when they have had opportunities, or when they really are struggling in certain areas, when Dallas Goedert got hurt at tight end and the running game's not really finding their traction, these are players you would think would elevate that, or certainly factor into the equation, and they're just inactive. So you kind of wonder why they're even here.
Right. All right. We'll wrap up the offense on this, because they're going to play the Giants. They're going to play Wink Martindale for the third time or fourth time since the start of last year. And every time they've played, so the first game, if you remember, was just a complete blowout. Eagles just wiped the floor with the Giants, right? And Wink Martindale did what he normally does, and which is blitz. And that game was highlighted by just enormous plays through the air. I mean, I didn't even go back and look. It's just something that I think about when I think of last year's team in that first game against the Giants. I'm going to take a quick peek here. I just know that Wink Martindale did what he likes to do, which is blitz a lot. And the Eagles scored 48 points, right? There was a 41-yard touchdown to Devontae Smith. I'm looking now, 33-yard touchdown to A.J. Brown. Like, you left this guy in you blitz, you leave guys in one-on-one situations. Jalen Hurts had a 10-yard touchdown. Miles Sanders had a 40-yard run. That was the danger. The second time around, the season ending, remember the Eagles were in a little bit of a rut after Jalen got hurt. Then he came back and they weren't really ripping it up. And then the Giants, they only beat the Giants 22-16 in that game. And I think the Eagles, if I'm not mistaken, they played some of their player. I think Jalen played in that game, correct?
Oh yeah, he had to play in that game, and he probably returned a little bit sooner than he had to, but he had to salvage that game because Gardner Minshew wasn't able to seal the deal in
Right.
his 2 starts. So yeah,
Right.
I
Because they were
remember
still
that game. I
playing for
was
the
there.
number
It was
one
a
seed,
really
right? Yeah.
it was a really sloppy, sluggish game, but they did what they had to do to win, and they were able to, get the 1 spot.
Right. So what I remember about that game was that Martindale did not blitz as much. I think he played far more
Right.
so. Now they're in a situation where right now it's different than last year. They had to play all these exotic dollar defenses because they had so many injuries. I mean, they were just throwing defensive backs out there, couldn't stop the run at all. That's why when they played in the playoffs, they got the Eagles just ran all over them and wiped the floor with them again. But this is an interesting matchup because if I'm Martindale and I'm seeing different left guard. Your right guard, Cam Jurgen, just back from injury, and he's new, and he didn't play against me last year. And that the quarterback's having trouble seeing it. I may try to start off going after him. I mean, the clearly the book right now is try to pressure Jalen Hurts up the middle, force him to the outside on the run, and he's not keeping his eyes downfield. So if I was good to take a guess, even though the less blitzing tactic worked better for him last year, everything is context matters here. And I think this time around he's going to go back to the old, I'm going to throw pressures at them and make them prove that they're out of the rut.
Absolutely. Expect a lot of creative alignments, expect stunts and twists and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff, especially if Sua Opeta is at, or whoever is at left guard. He's gonna throw a lot. That's my expectation.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll talk about that more as we do the Monday morning podcast and also the pregame show. All right. Well, we're going to talk about now this Eagles defense, which is, man, if you weren't confounded by how they were able to manage the first like 48 minutes of that game and then totally implode after, I don't know. Then you got a better stomach than most people. But before we get into that, I want to remind everybody that Santa Baby, the season for a fresh cut, is finally here with the sponsors of today's show, Manscaped. They're the leaders in below the waist grooming, and they just launched their 5th generation lawnmower to help you avoid another silent night in the bedroom. Take care of your special snowflake and watch your South Pole shine like never before. Get the best stocking stuffer of all by going to manscaped.com and using the promo code ITB20 for 20% off and free shipping. Mrs. Claus will thank you because everybody knows the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is the crown jewel of the holidays. Its skin-safe technology is a lifesaver, and it's known for reducing the nicks and cuts on the Santa sack. And don't forget the Manscaped Beard Hedger Pro Kit and the Handyman Electric Face Shaver to cover all your facial hair needs. Andrew DiCecco, you got a lot of facial hair there. You might need a little time with Manscaped. It's getting nice for the holidays. All right, you got to get rid of those icicles from your nose and your ears with the Weed Whacker 2.0 nose and ear hair trimmer. And you can take care of your chestnuts with the Manscaped Boxers 2.0. And don't forget about the Shears 3.0 nail grooming kit. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code ITB20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the promo code ITB20 and say ho, ho, ho to a well-groomed mistletoe with Manscaped. Nothing
Well
like
done.
Manscaped ad. Thank you. Thank you, my friend. Well
See,
done
I kept
for you,
it
not
together,
completely
man.
cracking up. What's that?
Look, I'm a professional.
That's right. You handle it well. Okay. Eagles defense. What did we learn about Matt Patricia? What are some of the things we learned about Matt Patricia's defense? It took me, the all 22 was late because they played on Monday. So the last time we did a podcast, I wasn't able to really see all the differences. And there were some that stood out, but what stood out to you?
I thought that his willingness to pretty much empty the bench and get different guys in the game. Patrick Johnson hadn't played a defensive snap all season. Finding a way to get him in as an off-ball linebacker in some cases. Obviously, Sidney Brown, Nolan Smith, Eli Ricks, Keely Ringo, Josh Jobe, getting some fresh legs in there, Jeff. The defense in the past few weeks has looked really lethargic and slow. And I think adding some of those fresh legs helped to sort of invigorate it with some energy and some physicality and toughness. A lot of 3 safety looks, and I didn't really see anything. Yeah, I'm interested to see how he continues to evolve once he sort of gets acclimated with his personnel and figures out how he's going to deploy certain guys. So I want to see if he's more willing to play some of these younger players and try to get them experience as they move into the postseason. I'm curious.
Yeah, me too. I want to go back to the first thing you said about playing players, probably, and I agree with you. I think he just put more players on the field to try to keep legs fresh as a response to why aren't we generating a pass rush? Well, maybe our guys are, playing too many snaps because we have some veterans there. Okay, I can live with that. However, when you take it to the extreme, Andrew, and I have to give credit to our great super intern, Ben Paul, for putting me onto this before I was able to even see the all 22 for myself. But on the final play for the Seahawks, the game winning touchdown, not only is it cover one man with no rush. So I don't understand playing a man defense that doesn't entail you rushing the quarterback with more than 4. All right. Because to me, it's 3rd and 10. You're trying to speed up that quarterback's clock, make him throw it fast, bring 0 pressure if you want.
And it's Drew Lock.
Yeah.
It's Drew Lock.
Drew Lock, right? So, but what was even more mind-boggling to me was that the interior pass rushers in that 4-man rush were Moro Ajomo and Milton Williams. I like Milton Williams. I have no issue with him. He can generate pressure, but I cannot. And again, I'm sure there's a reason for it. I wish someone would have asked Matt Patricia about it during his press conference, but how is it that in the most important snap of the game, you don't have either Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, or Brandon Graham rushing from the inside? And honestly, he threw it so fast, it may not have made it. I don't know. But we saw a couple plays, right, where Jalen Carter just bull whips the right guard and is on that quarterback so fast. Like, how do you not have one of those 3 guys on the inside in a 4-man rush? Moro Ajomo?
Yeah, I know. He played like 9 snaps all year or something to that effect. But Jalen Carter was tremendous in that game. And when I look at the snap counts on I guess Tuesday morning, he and Jordan Davis didn't play a ton. And even the week before that, I think Milton Williams played like 49% of the snaps. So I wonder, Geoff, if you're starting to see, this is usually in the point in the college football season where it's winding down. You almost wonder if they're just like tired legs, a lot of lethargic, in the trenches. Sometimes that wears on those big guys. So you wonder if they just needed some snaps off. But I mean, not in that critical moment.
No, man. Yeah. No. It couldn't have been.
Have your best
I can
players on the
understand,
field.
right? I can understand if 1 or 2 of those 3 guys needed. Okay. But again, to your point, it doesn't matter. Get out there and do what you got to do because you give us the best chance to win. But if it's both Carter and Cox that are then get Brandon Graham. If it's both Graham and Cox who are tired because they're a little older, then get Carter. Like, you cannot have the game on the line, only have a 4-man rush
and have Moro Ajomo.
Moro Ajomo. Yeah, like I'm not even trying to disrespect Moro Ajomo. I know he was drafted to be an interior pass rusher, but what are we talking about here? Like, come on.
Yeah, you have some of the league's best, and you're putting in a late round rookie who has played a handful of snaps. You got to get your best players out there, especially in a high leverage spot like that.
Right. All right. So getting back to your comment about playing Kelee Ringo more and Eli Ricks more, and it was weird. It seemed like they split reps. It was Ringo first, and then Ricks as far as outside corner, right? When they're in normal base or nickel. And then they did play some dime where they were able to get all of those guys on the field. Even Job came in maybe once or twice, right? So they are getting their young guys on the field.
Joe played 2 snaps, and at the first snap. Yeah, Joe played 2 snaps in this first snap. He got a DPI on DK Metcalf, and I don't know that he got in after that, or maybe one other play.
Welcome back to the game type thing.
So he's a really physical, handsy player. That's gonna happen.
So here's the situation. Here's the difficulty. Well, before I get to that, what did you think of Ringo? Because here's what I thought. I thought he played well, and I thought he played physical, and I think that showed up. And I thought he ran well when he was covering, but they only threw at him twice. I'm actually kind of surprised that Seattle, and I get that Drew Lock can be scattershot, but I'm surprised they didn't try to take a few more shots against that combination just to see if they could find some, make one mistake or just, you got great perimeter weapons against guys who are essentially rookies or second-year players.
Yeah, they didn't test him or Ricks for that matter as much as I thought. But speaking on Ringo, I thought he ran well. I thought he was extremely physical. Might be the Eagles' second best tackler in the secondary behind Reed Blankenship. He has the length and the speed and the athleticism that you like, and I thought he showed some good things. Would like to have seen what he would have done if they targeted him a little bit more. But I think there's some encouraging signs there, and I want to see what he's able to do with a larger sample size and being targeted a little bit more, because I think he has a lot to offer. Ricks as well. Ricks is a longer corner, and he was miscast as a nickel. I have to oftentimes remind a lot of folks about that, but I think he is a player who thrives playing on the outside. He seemed really eager to get back on the outside and prove what he's able to do. And I think that's a nice combination there if you're trying to get some young guys some snaps.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm really fascinated to see what happens here moving forward with Bradberry and with these younger guys getting in more. And also, obviously a big difference between the Sean Desai defense and what you saw from Patricia against Seattle. And again, this could be game specific. So I don't know. I don't want to make too much of it, but Matt Patricia played a lot more man defense. Now he played it with a lot of 2 safety shells. He played a lot of 2-man, which is not something that Sean Desai played a whole lot of. Sean Desai was either going to play cover 3 zone a lot, or he was going to play cover 1 man, try to throw some simulated pressures in there. But he wasn't playing a ton of 2-man. He played 1,000 different coverages. So it wasn't that. It's just that 2-man wasn't his thing. But Matt Patricia is a guy whose whole defensive philosophy from the Belichick tree is to play man defense. So now he's trying to run a Fangio scheme that had played heavily cover 3 zone. And now he's trying to put his fingerprint on it. So now he's playing a lot of man, but the Eagles are not built to play man. I mean, without Darius Slay, they don't have guys who can just sit there and run and cover. But so that's why he plays the two-man, which is sort of like a hybrid, right? It's like you got 2 safeties, but you're playing man underneath it. So you're trying to live in 2 worlds there. But that comes back to the Bradberry factor. Bradberry is a zone corner. He's always been. But you can't play zone all the time. And when it comes to third down, you've got to be able to play man, and you've got to be able to play pressure, like throw guys at the quarterback. And people say, why don't they just play in zone? It's like, well, if it's 3rd and 5 and you're playing nothing but zone, then quarterbacks don't have to worry about their guys beating it. And this is what's been going on. You got to give your front 4 some help. The reason why the front 4 isn't getting there isn't because all of a sudden Josh Sweat stinks and all of a sudden Hassan Reddick stinks. It's because they're getting no coverage for those 2 seconds that those guys need on the back end. So you start trying to play zone and giving even less coverage, right? You're just giving voids for quarterbacks to throw to. That was like Gannon last year, and then more so like the 2021 defense. So this might be, they may have to suck it up and say, you know what, Bradberry, you are our 1st and 2nd down outside corner. But when we start to get into our sub packages, you'll cover the tight end. Maybe.
That's what I think. Maybe.
Maybe.
That's what I think is going to happen. And listen, Geoff, you and anyone who's read my work knows that I'm a big JB guy. I really like the way he plays the game. Really smart player, class act all the way around. Yep. But so if I'm telling you that that the Eagles might need to consider sitting him down for a while and getting some of these young guys some snaps, I mean that's saying something. And maybe there's something there to covering the tight end. I think Byard is someone that really factors in that area, but maybe Bradberry, you want to get him on the field. He's a smart player and he's a good leader to help those young guys around. But I mean, look, what did JG used to always say? Jonathan Gannon, he used to say rush, cover, rush. The Eagles have really struggled to marry those two. And I think that's what you're seeing. It's a collective effort in that defensive collapse.
100%. And it would come at a good time, because if they're going to start playing a little bit more 2-man, 2 safeties, deep man underneath, then they're going to need Kevin Byard, who ordinarily matches up against the tight end, right? We've seen that a lot lately on those 3rd downs when they're in their 3rd down pressure packages or just coverage packages. He's going to be back deep now. He and Reed Blankenship are going to be your deep safeties, and Sidney Brown's going to be your box safety, or your what they're going to find a role for him, especially if it's like 3rd and 5 and you're worried that they might run. He'll be on the field. They'll only use 1 linebacker, which would ordinarily be Nick Morrow. That's a whole other, now it might be Shaq Leonard, and that presents other issues, but that's not really the point. The point is, with Kevin Byard playing deep now, you're going to need a good matchup on the tight end. So either you use Bradberry in that slot, or maybe now with Avonte Maddox coming back, you use Roby in that slot, and Bradberry is either like a dime defender or just not playing. I don't know.
I
I
think
don't know what
there,
the answer is.
I think there's something there with the tight end. I think you like Bradberry's length. And remember when they
Yes.
put him in the slot in training camp? My initial thought, I remember talking to Jody McDonald about this when he asked me, is that I thought that was in preparation or anticipation for the Darren Wallers twice a year, the Travis Kelce, the George Kittles, getting your longer corner who has really good, really big wingspan on matched up against some of those tight ends. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, definitely will. And again, if you're the Giants, you're Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator. You are just cooking up stuff right now, the best you can, because you're limited. Well, Tommy Cutlets had his thing, but he came back to earth against the Saints. But you're cooking up your best quick game right now, the best middle of the field. If Shaq Leonard has to be your one linebacker, if your tight end is still, hey, listen, I still like Darren Waller against Bradberry at this point because I think Bradberry is, no matter where he's lining up, he's a little bit in his head at the moment anyway. And I like Jalen Hyatt's speed against whoever might match up a little bit on the outside. So there will be opportunities. It's just that their offensive line is so bad that you really are more worried about whatever they can do in the quick game to keep the chains moving against the Eagles. But I'm sure they'll be, listen, you would love for the Eagles just to have a little bit better health in defense, because then you could be confident that they would shut this Giants offense down. It's bad offense. The quarterback's running a lot. He was taking a ton of sacks. But this whole linebacker injury now and Bradberry uncertainty just doesn't put you in that position where you feel confident right now that it's a layup. So we will see. We'll continue to cover this game going forward Monday, and of course in the pregame show starting again at what time did I say it starts? 1:00. Yeah, 1:00 pregame show, Inside the Birds pregame live. Andrew, it's been great having you on the podcast. I'm not letting you go without doing one thing. All right, you got to do one thing, and that's give us a prediction, but don't give it yet. First, we want to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, if you hop into Sky Motor Cars, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You will get a great deal. All right, Andrew, what's your prediction?
I think the Eagles get back on track here, Jeff. They got the all black uniforms. Everyone's going to be juiced. It's Christmas Day. They're hearing all the different things going on. I think they win 24-17.
24-17. Now, some might say that's too close for comfort. So it sounds like you feel they're going to get back on track, but we're still going to have a couple of questions coming out of this game.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the middle of the field, I think, is going to be open. He's going to be able to dink and dunk his way. So I think they are going to be able to manufacture some points with Tommy DeVito.
Mm-hmm.
But I think ultimately the Eagles are the better team, and it may not look pretty. It may not look like the quintessential win, but I think they'll be able to get it done.
All right, great stuff. By the way, to correct something I said earlier, or just to add to it, apparently Cade York will be back with the Giants and kicking for them without Randy Bullock. So they do have a kicker. It's Cade York, who I believe has kicked in the NFL for the Browns and some other teams before. So that will wrap it up and do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Big thanks to Andrew DiCecco for pinch hitting for Adam Kaplan. And always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.